Hello folks, welcome to part 2 about Rover SD1 3500 cold start issues. I have taken apart the stepper motor and the both on the bottom are the ones from the car and the one on the top is the spare unit which I have bought recently. When I removed the first stepper motor, the first thing I have noticed is the gap at the end of the valve body and the rotary spindle. This is the one from the car and this is the one from the spare unit. So the spare unit has really no gap, and on the stepper motors which are fitted in the car there is a huge gap. Normally you can pull out a little bit the rotary spindle, but there is a spring inside which pull back the spindle to its original position. But on them from the car I can also pull out a little bit. And the rotary spindle will be pulled back to its original position. I also have noticed that the distance here between the stepper motor body and the O-ring groove is a little bit higher or greater than the distance here on the stepper motor fitted on the car. Okay, so let's try to measure the distance. Yeah, we have here about 15.6 millimeters. On the second carb it's a little bit more, nearly 16. And on the spare unit it's about 16.5. So compared to this one we need at least 1 millimeter. And as you can see here, the distance between stepper motor body and rotary spindle is exactly the same as on the spare one. So due to the fact that the valve body is too far in the stepper motor body, when I rotate this here, the groove of the spindle aligns at the very late stage with the hole in the valve body, and this tells me that when the choke rotates to a certain position, it gets too much air from the vacuum valve and too less fuel via this hole. So I think when I realign the valve body, that it matches exactly with the groove in this rotary spindle, the cold start issue should be solved. Another thing I have noticed is this inner O-ring here. When fitting it to the carburetor, it's very hard to get this O-ring into the choke bore on the carburetor. So these are the original O-rings from a well-known UK vendor, and I did some investigating about O-rings on the internet, and there are some O-ring calculators, some online O-ring calculators in the internet, and put in the dimensions here from the valve body, and as a result I got an O-ring which should have a little bit less thickness than this one here. So when key in the values of this O-ring here, the calculator tells me it will not fit 100%. So these are the vacuum valves switch which are connected to the carburetor. These vacuum switch are operated via the vacuum of the intake manifold, and these switches regulates if more or less air will be drawn into the choke chamber. So to see if there is a vacuum leak or not on the vacuum valve, I attached the vacuum pump. So let's try to suck out the air. So the gauge shows no changes in the value, so we can assume that this valve is sealed. Same procedure with the second valve. So this valve is also sealed. So next step will be to go in the shop and dismantle the two stepper motors and figure out why the choke body has been pressed in so far.